So as we pick up with the third part of our House of M event, what we're going to find here is that things are going to move at a very, very fast pace. What we do as we start this story is that we pick up with Wolverine. And what's really interesting here is, again, we really tack onto the fact that everybody's gotten their heart's desires in this reality when it's revealed to us that Wolverine remembers everything. He doesn't remember bits and pieces of his whole life. He remembers his whole life. And what this tells us here is that these memories that Wolverine had were not gone entirely like he had believed. They had not been wiped from his mind. They had simply just been suppressed over years and years of having his mind tampered with, which is really interesting because, again, what this does is it tells us how much power the Scarlet Witch has. Where Charles Xavier has spent years trying to restore the memories of Magneto, the Scarlet Witch was able to do it in a single action, or perhaps Charles Xavier didn't want to restore all the memories, he only wanted to restore part of them. We're not exactly sure here. But what we do is we follow Wolverine as he begins to succumb to everything that's going on, and he jumps from the helicarrier in order to escape the questions from Mystique, as well as this presumed, lifestyle that he's been leading so far. And what happens is Wolverine is almost immediately pursued by Mystique, as well as Jessica Drew and Toad and the rest of his S.H.I.E.L.D. team. And so what happens is that while Wolverine's trying to escape in the streets below, he's found by Luke Cage. Now, initially, it's Cloak that actually picks him up and takes him back, but Luke Cage has been the one that was tracking him. And when Wolverine arrives in front of Luke Cage, what Luke Cage says is that Wolverine needs to disable the tracker in his neck. Luke Cage says that he knows that Wolverine is part of Sebastian Shaw's Red Guard, that Wolverine is part of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that S.H.I.E.L.D. will inevitably be looking for him. And so what happens is that while Wolverine is overwhelmed here, he fails to follow the instructions of Luke Cage, and Hawkeye appears. And it tells us that Hawkeye is alive in this reality, indicating that, of course, the Scarlet Witch had brought him back to life. And so what takes place is that over the course of the next few minutes, Wolverine is basically knocked unconscious by Hawkeye. And what happens when Wolverine comes to is he asks them how long he was out. And when they say he was out for about 30 seconds or so, Wolverine tells him it's too late. And the entire group is attacked by S.H.I.E.L.D. sentinels. And so what happens is Cloak uses his ability to teleport to immediately move them away and takes them to the mansion of the Kingpin. And so this is when the questions begin to start rolling in. We of course see questions on both sides. The first question Wolverine asks of Luke Cage is why it is Luke Cage had rescued him. And of course Luke Cage is asking him questions like why it is that Wolverine knows who he is. And so again, as they're continuing to go back and forth, eventually Wolverine is the first one to acquiesce. And Wolverine says that it's not going to make any sense to Luke Cage, but Wolverine was a new Avenger about 2 days ago. And then he suddenly woke up and found this circumstance and everything being what it was, and things had changed drastically. And he says this is not the way the reality is supposed to be, that things are entirely different. Now the initial response that Wolverine expects from Luke Cage is that Luke Cage would be in disbelief. But what Luke Cage says is that a girl named Layla Miller had come to him a couple days beforehand and had told Luke Cage the exact same thing, that things weren't right, that something was wrong here. And so what the group does is they look up Emma Frost in the phone book due to the fact that Wolverine says that Emma Frost was formerly a leader of the X-Men before this reality had taken place, and that Emma Frost will know what to do. And so what they do is they arrive at the apartment of Emma Frost, and when she walks in, her initial reaction is skepticism. She actually freezes everybody in place. But then we see that Layla Miller basically awakens her. And this is the process whereby Layla Miller wakes up, or reactivates the memories they have of the real life, of the real world, and Emma Frost is overcome with grief and anger here. And her initial response is the same as Wolverine's, in the sense that the idea here seems to be that Magneto is the one responsible for all of this. And so what Emma Frost says is they basically need to go about and awake as many superheroes as they possibly can so that they can band together and they can confront Magneto. And so what happens here is they take it in turn to confront various people. They confront Doctor Strange, they confront Tony Stark, they confront Peter Parker, Spider-Man, as well as a litany of other individuals. And ultimately they come together in a single location to make the decision on what it is that needs to happen here. And again, the group recognizes the difficulty in this situation in the sense that because Magneto is basically the leader of the world here, because he runs everything, he's going to have an exorbitant amount of security, to say nothing of the powers that he has here. And so their best bet is to somehow find a way to attack Magneto using some kind of a secretive method to basically distract him. And so what we do here is we switch to Magneto, and what we find out is that in this particular instance, Charles Xavier appears to be dead here. Now, Charles Xavier is a really interesting enigma in the House of M, because what we're going to find is that the events as they've unfolded, that is to say, this new reality could not have been done without the mind of Charles Xavier. And we're going to find just how far deep that goes. But what we do is we pick up with Magneto as well as various other individuals as they're going about and having some sort of grand celebration gala. And what this does is it again continues to show us all these other people who are part of this reality. The name of the Submariner is still part of this reality. That Victor Von Doom is again the leader of Latveria, as well as the head of the Fantastic Four in this reality. We find that that Storm is the Queen of Kenya. And again, what this tells us here is Storm, like Colossus, had never been removed from her environment at the hands of Charles Xavier, because Charles Xavier apparently didn't exist here. And so as a result, she simply maintained her current life. Now, we don't know if she's still some measure of a thief, because remember, during the original X-Men series, during the giant-sized X-Men story, we had seen that she had been basically liberated from her lifestyle by Charles Xavier as being a thief in order for her to join the X-Men. And so again, as things progress, as things continue, we ultimately see that the plan of the awakened superheroes begins to come to fruition when the group as a whole sends a sentinel skyrocketing, or plummeting towards the grand celebration gala at the House of Magnus. And of course, Magneto, being able to control metal, is easily able to sustain, or to shut down this sentinel and to keep it from crashing into everything and destroying and possibly killing people. But what we do is we realize that during this entire instance, that again, this was the distraction that the awakened superheroes were using. And amidst the chaos and amidst the distracted various people here, that ultimately the group immediately descends onto the House of Magnus and begins attacking various people. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I know it was very, very short, but bear with me for that, and I will catch you guys later. Peace. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. There you can keep up with all the updates from Comics Explained and talk to me directly.